So, 1920s, I'm going to do a lot of pictures and cartoons here that you will be looking at to kind of like, maybe helpful that we can get through this decade. I do not think that the 1920s on for sure they're going to try to stay away from. It's good, again, for the extra unicorn point for like comparing and contrasting. You think of the 1920s, you think Gilded Age. You think, Republican, it's laissez-faire, it's hands-off. It is the time of industry. It's kind of the rebirth of the kind of growing, corporations and somewhat monopolization because seemingly the progressive era is over. The first cartoon that I have up here, and sometimes I'll try to like zoom in, it's talking about like what historians are going to name this dying decade. And you can probably kind of assume, even though I don't have the year on here, that it's around 1929, 1930 this cartoon is made. And you see there was the saxophone age, like that, what should we do, the, decadent, like again, the dirty decade, as they say, on here. What are you going to call the 20s? And this is what historians do. Nobody in the 20s were like saying, this is the roaring 20s, That was not the kind of, adjectives that was kind of used during this as what we do to label it, kind of describe it. So saying it is the jazz age or the roaring 20s, that should give you a clue about what this decade is all about. You should be able to recognize it, why they label it that. You notice that the dying, because you know what's at the end of this decade. Talking about probably the greatest panic / depression of the 20th century. And you think about some of the things that represent. I'll put some images up. Like you see the flapper design and ad here, and again you see magazines very prominent, radio advertising what you should buy, what you should have. That's the visuals for people back then. It's this consumerism that you have here, and this that's what it's all about, capital, goods and stuff that you're going to get. And I have the cartoon right here that is this is a very familiar cartoon in the 20s about Grandpap. It seems like all the things that you have, all the material stuff. And you got to think, these people are coming out of the 19th century, the older generation in here, and they're saying that they're spoiled. And that's always the thing that you hear from, people from me, like Generation X and you Zoomers, that you're spoiled, you have everything in here. Well, 20s was that. It's like you have a fan, you have now you have a, refrigerator, you have a vacuum cleaner, you have things and materials that makes your life so convenient. You have a radio, my goodness, in your home. A lot of people did not have that, but you still had people, that would move into the middle class doing that. Anyway, all right, and then you have the kind of extremes here that I put. What are some of these kind of you see here, this traditionalism versus modernity, traditionalism versus modernity, rural versus urban. That's the type of thing that you're kind of seeing here, the kind of Scopes monkey trial. You see the fundamentalism versus modernity, and who's immoral and who is kind of a little bit more conservative, and how most people, I love the guy is always in the middle, because most people are in between, of course. We know that today. Most people would never describe themselves as I'm communist like Price, or I'm conservative only, and very religious and fundamentalist on the left. Most people are in the middle, but you're seeing this kind of struggle and fight as kind of morality kind of loosens up a little bit, questioning by the lost generation what is the meaning of all this material wealth. So that's what you're getting, that kind of public debate, and you begin to see people saying, why should I care about material wealth? Why should I dress the way like traditional people? It's not even comfortable. It's not even, good for me as a woman to do this. All right. So, Coming up on number 2, the kind of return to normalcy that Harding is elected on. In the cartoon there, you're seeing there is a struggle here. What are you going to do about taxes? What are you going to do about this progressive kind of, government involvement? And of course, Harding and all the Republican presidents, Coolidge and Hoover, as always, bring it back to low taxation, cut it from like 75% on the, on the wealthiest to about 25%. Leave corporations, leave the businesses alone. Let them do what they need to do. All right. And if anybody's going to provide or do things, they're going to self-regulate and they're going to provide fringe benefits to the workers. What you need to do is this, as this kind of, this, as we go into from 1919. Getting in here, what's lingering from the Palmer raids, even though the Palmer raids have ended, is all this radicalism. You see this kind of Bolshevism, and that means communism. Remember the Communist Revolution, 1917, you see that people are very scared about all the things that it can cause, the disruption coming from immigration. They're bringing in these radical revolutionary ideas that's upset America. Can I just enjoy myself and enjoy the American way? Let's get back, and it's the kind of argument to conservatism that Americans are good, we're democratic, we're not into these radical solutions. You see this cartoon right here, if you can zoom in here, you see even the labor union should be kicking out the IWW and all its, radical notions here about Bolshevik ideas and things that even the public, even the Capitol is trying to kick that out. We're a democracy, but we don't want to get too extreme here. Very good. And that's under my pick 2 or 3 here. And the pick 2 or 3 is just anything that can remember from the 20s to give you some context. I love this KKK picture that I'm coming up here. You see, everybody knows KKK is anti-African American. That's even for Reconstruction. Now you get the revival of the KKK in the 1920s. Like, how do we go mainstream? Well, you're anti-Bolshevik, you're anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. And to really get you into California, the Midwest, the North, you're anti-Catholic. And we've had a tradition of being kind of Catholic since the First Great Awakening, since kind of coming together that this is going to be more of a Protestant dominant nation. And what's so great about the next cartoon that you see up here, I love the Republican Party, it's 1928. Al Smith is a Catholic, oh my God, and the Republicans are running, and you see that Hoover's, or they're getting ready to nominate somebody to run on the Republican side here. Who do you have to appease and please? Look at the Klan, how they're represented, and you see the state of Indiana. Because at this time, at the end of the 1920s, there's more membership of the Klan in Indiana than anywhere else in America. I told you, California, Anaheim, they used to call it Klanaheim. It's becoming mainstream. So you see a lot of people in here because it's like America first, and it just rides a popular wave on here. Very good. All right, so it's just a great cartoon on here. Now, and to come up about this is that the entertainment that I'm putting up here, just kind of like, Babe Ruth, Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, those types. And then again, because you're having leisure time, you want to be entertained. And that is something that is part of a business, all this, the movie industry, the entertainment industry, and kind of the barnstorming from the airplanes and what some of the stunts that they're doing and whatever the attraction. You take these road shows, really across the nation doing some of these things here. Now the next cartoon, rural versus urban. By the 1920 census here, you see now more people are living in the cities than the country. But always you see here what is trying to show now these city people with their immorality, with their listening to jazz music. They're really crushing traditional values. They are destroying the American way of life. I will probably be like, whoever I'll vote for is a little bit anti-rural, you know. This is what you see today. People say blue states and red states. It's more urban versus and suburban kind of somewhat together in a way versus the more rural and outlying areas there. You know, you may consider like the urban is a little bit more blue, suburban is purple, and the more rural areas is more red. And you have this kind of not only political difference, social differences as well. Please try to understand. This is very important to understand. This is always, it's really kind of coalescing here in the 1920s where you can see these kind of dividing lines as more people live in the cities here. Very good. I love the kind of prohibition cartoon here. It's that, and I've always said about this, prohibition and temperance is a very popular idea that was proposed in 1918 and ratified by 1920 with, 36 states. Kind of caught some congressmen on that. Everybody wants to be better than the others, and everybody wants to be more pure, more moral, and say, hey, drinking is bad for you, and then the next 5 minutes they're going home to take a drink. It's like the Klan. The Klan are for prohibition. They are for temperance. And then you see after their big Klan rally, they're going behind, the barn or going to the side and like, hey, now let's have a drink. Don't tell the head Kleagle, the exalted Cyclops. I know these strange names of the Klan, but they're taking a taste of liquor. It's kind of the hypocrisy. Always this thing about we want teenagers and kids to have fun, but don't have too much fun. I don't want you to be, doing this or engaged in this activity. It's always that kind of restraint, the kind of, the religious values that we have that's, so in just hardcore in America to kind of restrain you from this having too much fun at this time. Harlem Renaissance, Marcus Garvey, Unia. I love that. God, you guys did such a good job on the Harlem Renaissance projects, and you guys are gonna be so far ahead, and ladies, that it's really a political movement. Harlem Renaissance. It's more of that than really a time where artists flourished. A time where jazz music was a hit, and now we know now they're doing poetry, they're writing books. They've always been doing this. It's more publicity and PR that to appreciate this kind of recognition of like the talents and the hard work of a diversity of people across the nation besides Harlem, which the label is for, of all African Americans, talents, their hard work, and other things that they can do. They are multi-talented. They're not just segmented to one occupation. And the political movement about New Negro, I told you, lynchings go down. Klan rises, lynchings go down. The publicity of the NAACP, the movements about Marcus Garvey, is this kind of the early Black Pride movement of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. It's just really amazing that, yes, it's still bad. It is really, but people are beginning to, Philip Randolph, all the black newspapers exposing if there is a lynching, what's going on? What can you do? Boycott this store. Hey, this store, they're already doing that before the 1950s. Just saying. And they are publishing these kind of poems by Claude McKay, in here, like again, are showing that Paul Robeson is starring in this movie or something that, to kind of publicize this kind of what we label the Harlem Renaissance. All right. Whew. All right, I know that's a lot. Now getting towards the end, because we'll get to FDR on Thursday. The Hoover, what you need to know is probably the two major things is the Great Depression and what happens with the bonus Army debacle that he's not a cause of, but it just happens on his like last year. Well, not the last year of his, but the election year of his presidency. What are the causes of the Great Depression? Is always the over speculation of, like, you know, again, all in the stock market, everything is valuable, you can become rich. Overproduction. There's too many cars around. You not only got Ford, you got GM, you got Chrysler, you got all kinds of, you know, car companies at this time here. So has GM coalesced yet? I kind of like him. Maybe I misspoke about that. But regardless, though, Dodge Brothers. So you're having all these, you know, car companies, but there's just too many of that, not enough buyers here. The consumption that we're buying on credit, buying on margin, even the stock market here. Over farming, the last golden age of farming, 1901 is going to happen. And towards the last 5 or 6 minutes here, the last golden age, I was saying, of farming between, you know, the early 1900s, good weather in 1920s, like that, you know. Then you had the war, you know, Europe really needed their farm products, but now they're just getting too good at their job, and, you know, you get the overfarming. And then the soil erosion, the bad kind of, like, you know, climate that's kind of settling in, you know, for a period of time in the early 1930s, and going to cause havoc there. And over there, you have everybody's kind of worldwide depression causing this Great Depression. Hoover's downfall is he did not recognize the severity of these bad economic times. So, like, prosperity is just around the corner. Rugged individualism. You know, you do not rely on the government for a handout. It creates dependency. You hear these kind of arguments today, very much the foundation of conservative arguments that, you know, and I don't think he just saw the writing on the wall that maybe prosperity was not just around the corner. And it really hit people hard. And people, we're somewhat not comparing this to the Great Depression at all, but that you miss things once you have stuff and have materials, services. Your way of life is a little bit less easy, and that's what's hitting people hard. You kind of, you know, you gotta go back to a kind of like really bare bones lifestyle, and you're not used to the kind of, you know, things that you're used to, as we somewhat can relate somewhat today, and that was going on, and Hoover did not do that. And then the bonus arm with MacArthur and Patton sent out to the veterans trying to get their, you know, their bonus. You know, FDR just had to stay alive, as they said, for November for him to win the president. FDR's president. We'll talk about that on Thursday. Very quickly, the New Deals and World War II, because I really doubt